Hello, everybody. Amy Armstrong here. And today I'm sitting down with the lovely, brave Karen Humphries, and she is also the author. She's got her book in the background. I've got my copy. This Is My Raw is Karen's book, which she's going to talk a little bit about today. So Karen is the change chick. Explain to us what that is, what that means, Karen.
Thank you so much for having me today, Amy. It's easier to say I'm a change facilitator than start to rattle off I'm a kinesiology practitioner, a leap and nest practitioner. I'm an intuitive meditation facilitator, virtual gastric band hypnosis practitioner. By trade, originally, I'm an industrial chemist, environmental scientist. I'm a HSEQR auditor. I mean, the list is just ridiculous, all of the different things that I've done. But effectively, my role is to support a client who wishes to make a change in their life, whether they understand what the roadblock is or not. My job primarily as a coach, we'll call it a life coach, whatever you want to call it, is I primarily use kinesiology, and people go, oh my gosh, Karen, what is that? And if I give you the 50-year-old boy answer, we might get blocked on social media. So I'll keep that nice and clean and say, look, kinesiology is a stress management modality where we utilize muscle monitoring, muscles in your arms, legs, neck, anywhere you've got a muscle, we can monitor it. But we go for the easy access ones because it's comfortable to monitor an arm and a muscle in your forearm or your arm or your neck or your shoulder or your leg. And when we monitor a muscle, because we have a piezoelectric current that drives the messaging to and from the brain, we can access how the muscle turns on and off with stress or not with stress. So whether a message coming from the brain saying, move my arm from A to B, if there's stress involved, the movement may not be smooth. For example, we might be clumsy, or we might not be able to speak articulately, or we might not be able to think of the answer when someone tests us on the spot. So when we look at kinesiology, we're utilising all of the Western sciences of medicine. So we study anatomy, physiology, pathophysiology, biochemistry. Basically, how does the body work and function, and what are all of the systems? But the beauty of what I like about it is that it incorporates the Eastern sciences of medicine. So, for example, traditional Chinese medicine and meridian therapy, so how the body communicates with itself and how all of the organs talk to each other. And in an ideal world, we want everything talking nicely, not talking smack internally within our body. But it also incorporates chakras, and kinesiology incorporates in some modalities the nadi system, so that the very fine communication channels and conduits, as well as our energetic layers. So we look at the energy of physical, mental, emotional, and the energy systems which drive how our systems work. So when you come to see someone like a kinesiologist, we're not just looking at why, for example, so Amy and I share clients sometimes, and I will send a client to Amy because they've got, say, for example, a copper iron imbalance, but they present in Western medicine as an iron deficiency and are given iron supplements traditionally, and Amy's nodding if you're listening. And when Amy or I work on them, I like to think of nothing in our body works in isolation. So we all have thoughts, feelings, and emotions. But with that mental process and those emotional feelings, we have beliefs and values, so how we think about the thoughts, feelings. And then we might have a physical reaction of feeling good with joy or feeling bad with anger, or that didn't taste nice. So we're not just one thing, and we're not just a group of things. We are a system that constantly evolves. And so when I look at someone like who has an iron deficiency, I'm looking at, well, what's going on with the mineral system, and where is absorption not working, or where is the transport of that mineral working or deficient? And, is it stuck in tissues? Is it migrating through cell walls? Is it being uptaken in the cell, say in the mitochondria? So we're looking at very macro, big picture level, all the way down to the microscopic, what's happening inside of a cell, all in a session, because no pressure there at all. And so we look at, when someone comes to see me, I often explain to them, if you had to be conscious of all of the things that are going on in your body, you would go bonkers. So there's some things that we think about, how to drive a car, but you don't want to be sitting and thinking about how you blink, when you're to breathe, how you pump your heart, how your liver digests and does all of its 500 plus metabolic functions. So we have some things that run on autopilot, but they're still controlled by the brain when we're in thrive mode, or the parasympathetic nervous system state. However, when we do stress and our brain migrates us into that survival program, a lot of people don't understand that we're actually shutting down parts of our functional brain where we do our good thinking, not reaction. When we do our good feelings, not reacting or feeling stuck or overwhelmed or anxious. I call it the meerkat mode, where we're shutting down things and just going back to that caveman survival response of, what do I need to do to get through this? And there's 4 things. We fight, we flee, we freeze, or we take a breath, and then one of those things kicks in.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of what I do, all in a nutshell. That's the easiest way to explain how a session works. And it is very different to when you see any other type of therapist, because you have to wrap your head around the Eastern sciences of energy. And I'm always happy to talk quantum physics with someone and how space and time work. But that bends people's brains, and they just come to me because they want to feel better. So that's my job, is I'm an obstacle remover.
Yeah, that's it. And that's a really good segue into telling us then what sort of people or what sort of women come to see you. And I say women because I predominantly do work with women. So I'm thinking of my own clientele here, and I'm thinking about people who, we've had that conversation that they are stuck in fight or flight mode, whether they know it or not.
Yeah.
Their cells are responding a certain way. There's minerals that are leaving their body and minerals that are becoming dysregulated for them to be experiencing their symptoms. And we need to remove this roadblock of this this fight or flight, not remove the fight or flight mode, but we need to make that switch that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So how does that translate into the sorts of clients that find their way to you? What are they experiencing in terms of kind of symptoms and things to be?
That's a great question. So, for example, a young woman in her late teens, early 20s may come to me with really intense anxiety. The palpating chest, the sweats, the fast breathing. They look like a meerkat on drugs. And they explain that to me. And then they might have very heavy irregular periods. A woman in her late 20s to early 30s may come to me with that switching type of behaviour and the dysregulated mineral hormonal systems, and they may be having trouble conceiving. A woman in her mid to late 30s may be having that awakening of, well, I've got a nest, I've got a rooster in my nest, I've put chickens in my nest, now who the F am I? And that whole questioning of, why am I here? What is my purpose? And everything is overwhelming because of all the balls being juggled in the air. A woman in her 40s, when she's just starting to enter into perimenopause and stepping into owning who she is, may still be questioning who she is, but maybe not sleeping well, maybe has gained a little weight, or having the mature age acne or sleep interruption, or out of the blue panic or overwhelm, or realizing that they go so fast that there's no actual time. When they go on holidays, they need to take 6 weeks break because their whole routine and life is so fast that they don't actually understand what slow down is. So then they stop work, they get sick for a couple of days on the first week of their holiday, And then it takes them a month to unwind, and then they go back to work not feeling refreshed. They've only just feel like, oh, I finally wound down.
Yeah.
And they're not liking where they've arrived at. And so they're questioning their life and how they find inner peace. Whereas they've just spent 20 years racing to this space of being empowered and independent and an amazing woman, but life is so full of all of these things that you have to do. And so the woman in her, as she's reaching 50, is looking for, and where do I pause all of that shit?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes sense, and it really resonates for me personally as well. So, yeah,
I think it resonates for anyone living in Western society with Western societal beliefs. I think it's not until you travel into Eastern cultures where life is very simple and their possessions, value is low. So they cherish everything that they have, and that they come together as family. Their whole value system is completely different to that in Western societies. So I think depending on where you've been raised and what your family values are from childhood, and what your childhood was like and how well you communicate, I often find that there's lots and lots of stress that's easily avoided when you're present. But there's lots of stress when, well, what will happen here and what will happen there, and what about this, and I need to get this perfect and I'm not in control here, and it's all future tense.
yeah,
It's not being present, and present is the only time reference where we can make change.
absolutely.
So
Yeah,
when you've got those types of survival patterns going on, it's very challenging to then stay in your body and remain present to change the pattern. And that's probably 90% of my work, is just helping people stay present and become consciously aware of these little itty bitty triggers that derail their entire life and well-being based on this one little reaction that their body is having to a place, a person, or a thing.
yeah.
It's incredible.
And we've all got those survival patterns, and
Everyone is wired like the caveman still.
absolutely. And I think that that word trauma that we reserve for thinking about people who've suffered from really significant events.
Yeah.
Is kind of, we're redefining what trauma is, aren't we?
I absolutely agree. I think when people realize, I think people have this understanding that trauma is from a significant event. And in actual fact, clinically, trauma is defined in Western medicine as a reaction that you have to a place, a thing, or an event, or a circumstance that you haven't yet recovered from. So if we take the current state of the world, which is interesting, and there's lots of uncertainty. So without getting into the politics and all of that hoo-ha, life is still quite uncertain. You book a plane flight, you don't know whether it's going to be cancelled or postponed or delayed, blah, blah. We'll have to wear masks. There's lots of questions. The life that we knew of, jumping in the car and going here, there, and doing anything we want, wherever we want, however we want, is not currently available to us.
Yeah.
That in itself is triggering. Turning on the news and listening to a bad news is triggering. So when we talk about trigger, we're not in that thrive state where we've got access to all of our brain to process and understand and step out of. A lot of this stuff is not our drama. It's not our circumstance. It's not in our power to control. And yet we still remain invested in everything happening outside of us. And so we'll never resolve it.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of my work, probably in the last 2 years, it's a very consistent homework and message: just do you. And when you can just do you, especially if you're a working mum, you're the maypole in your household and everyone feeds off your energy. So if you're grounded, centered, focused, balanced and protected, feeling good about yourself, feeling empowered, everyone's just groovy, baby.
Yeah.
But if you're that crazy meerkat running around without your hair done and screeching at everyone, guess what everyone else is going to be like? And it's chaos.
Yeah. And the word stuck really comes to mind, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We get stuck in these patterns. And I know, you know, as a mum myself and a mid-40s-year-old woman, we tend to fall back on these like behaviours, and you know, they're not serving us.
No, but we don't even know that they're there until we're triggered. And I explain it to people, this whole switching of, you know, we might go through some questions when we first identify a switch that really challenges the conscious and the unconscious brain of, well, I want to get over this problem. And the person goes, yeah, I do. But their body's saying, no, I've got no capacity. And if you liken it to, you're juggling a heap of balls in the air, and if you could only just turn your head to the left, you would see the solution. But you can imagine when you've toned down, because you're in survival, you've toned down access to your high ordered thinking in the neocortex, and you've toned down because your brain thinks you're in survival, you've toned down your dorsal frontal lateral cortex where all the solution and logical thinking happens, and you're just running from the reptilian brain in the brainstem.
Yeah.
You know, can't think of the solution, can't gift yourself that moment to just breathe. You just continue juggling the balls and you'll fear dropping a ball. You will fear of failure. You will experience then the shame, blame, guilt that goes with having the fear of having all of these balls in the first place. And yet we can do some strategies like deep, purposeful breathing, holding your emotional stress release points, doing some very basic things and just coming back into the present moment. You realize you don't have to juggle 10 balls. You can put them all down, turn left, find a solution, go and grab it and do that instead, or add. And the solution is you put the balls in a basket instead of having to walk around juggling them.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, why didn't I think of that before? Because
So
your brain had you in survival mode.
yeah. And so what are some of the things that we can do for ourselves at home, you know, on a daily or regular basis to start ourselves down that process of making the switch out of that fight or flight mode and into this?
As someone who's had PTSD, and someone said to me the other day, you don't know what it's like, Karen. I go, well, yeah, I do actually. I've been through PTSD and the overwhelm, the anxiety and the panic, and it's awful. And I want to remind your audience that it's taken some time to get you into this state of anxiety. And the first thing you have to do is be really kind and gentle with yourself. Acknowledge that that's the state you're in. And sometimes it starts with taking a nice, slow, deep breath in through the nose and saying to yourself, in this moment, breathing out, I'm okay. And you might have to do that a couple of times. And then your brain starts to switch back on and start to become reintegrated and go, you know what, actually, I am okay. There's no blood. The house isn't on fire. The kids are still breathing. Everything is actually okay. It has to be, my advice to people is be consistent. So ideally, you would get outside in the morning before lunch and expose yourself to sunlight and do some gentle walking. There's a couple of reasons for this. When we have sunlight before, say, 10 to 12 in the morning, we're resetting our circadian rhythm. So this is our energetic hormonal rhythm that says to our brain, hey, Curly, it's daytime. This is when you're awake. And then as it gets dark, your body goes, oh, now it's time to go to sleep. And so you'll sleep better. Another reason why I encourage gentle walking, not running or thrashing yourself at the gym, is that gentle walking at a pace where you can just hold a conversation with a friend. So then you've got a mate date. So you're getting social contact, you're having aerobic exercise, but the gentle movement actually helps your body process excess cortisol. And when we process cortisol, for those who don't know, is just that stress chemical your body makes when you're doing meerkat mode, like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. We make cortisol, and that primes our body to dilate our vessels and get ready to fight or flee. gentle walking helps make serotonin, the feel-good hormone, but it also helps shift and process cortisol. But emotion also helps you shift any stagnant emotional energy. So I would defy anyone to go for a quick 20-minute walk and still feel as deeply emotional as what they did before the walk. Now, that's not to say anxiety will go away, but it's one strategy where you're breathing and shifting the diaphragm down and getting some really good breaths of air. So it's re-challenging the brain. You're not under threat. There's no need to maintain this survival pattern. And after a little while, that settles down. You can hold your emotional stress release points. So there's points in the middle of your forehead. So if you were to hold your fingers over your eyes and then raise them up in the middle of your forehead, those are your emotional stress release points. And this is saying to your brain, please turn back on my frontal cortex. This is where all the solution is happening. Please send some oxygenated, nutrient-rich blood and turn back on my emotional stress release points. And you can add to holding your hand at the base of your skull where the occiput is. And this is saying to the cerebellum, we don't need to keep holding on to this. You know, it's not the Admiral saying, right, we're at DEFCON 1. No. Please just send some more oxygen and lymphatic drainage up in the head and just turn everything back on. Turn on the front and back to talk to each other so we pull out the right thing from our long-term memory, not this reactive program.
Yeah. And
sorry, go on.
Well, I was just going to say the gentle walking that you're talking about. When I was thinking about, doing that myself this morning, my best practice of gratefulness is done when I'm out walking in nature as well. I can find just being grateful for, the flower growing out of the crack of the pavement, or I really, and now that you're saying all the things that are happening when you're doing that gentle walking, I'm guessing that's just part of my brain being able to find that place where I can actually just be grateful in those moments.
It's funny you say that. There's a couple of things that happens when we're out in nature. And if we go back to that switching understanding, when we switch, we just have our focal vision. We actually turn off our peripheral visual field. So it's like you've got meerkat goggles on. And you turn your head to look left and right for a potential threat, like the saber. Where's that saber-toothed tiger? Because it's going to get me.
Yeah.
When we're out in nature, we're forcing our body to look all around and take in the beauty around. So we're validating to our brain our peripheral visual field is clear and safe of the saber-toothed tiger, 1. 2, we're also immersing ourselves into something natural, which has a high vibrational state. And so the energy layers around our body or our auric field get charged up by immersing ourselves into nature. In Japan, executives who are stressed out to the max are actually sent for walks in the forest. It's called forest therapy. Now, in an ideal situation, and I was reading this when I had cancer, that and this was discovered by a man who was having treatment himself, that walking 40 minutes before the sun crests for dawn has the highest level of oxygen of the day. So walking just as it's dawn gives you a huge oxygen fix, which helps with mineral and hormonal stabilization. It's great for the brain. It's great for the body. So you feel hugely energized after that. And you're getting a hit of vitamin D without getting sunburnt. And you're feeling good and getting aerobic exercise. We've just got to wait for the mornings to get a little warmer, and that'll be much more civilized to do the morning dawn walk.
Yeah.
So yes, that's why an outside walk is so good for you, because you're getting vitamin D absorbed through the retina of the eye. You're moving your body and making feel-good hormones in your gut, and you're bringing the cortisol levels down.
Yeah, I love it. And what a simple strategy to help
Absolutely
tame the tiger. And
I would also add to that, based on what Amy does, audience, is hydration and consumption of minerals like fruit and veggies also does help restabilize an integrated brain function.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess, you know, we know that they're part of a healthy life to do those things.
Yes.
But yeah, really just thinking specifically about that,
Yes.
you know, about that, the brain, they're so important for that as well. So I'm going to chat with you again. So we're not going to be able to go too much into the book this time around. I'm going to leave that for a whole separate chat because I think it's worthwhile. But
I kind of just summarised chapter 1 already.
I really feel like you have. I'm thinking when you're saying these things, I've heard these before. And look, you know, I just want to say that I'm on my second read of your book now, and I really enjoyed it. I take so much away from it.
Oh, that's good.
So we'll talk about this another time, but I just want you to give it a little plug before we end this talk in you know, saying all the things that we've said today about helping women to make that switch out of that fight or flight mode so that healing can begin. How does your book support that process?
So this is my raw Transform Your Trauma Tale, aims at breaking down and gifting the reader conscious awareness of why they've arrived at stress and overwhelm and anxiety. And it basically translates all of the science that I've studied into lay terms. I'm using case studies and examples so that you actually understand each of the points and why you've arrived at overwhelm. And at the end of each chapter, there is very practical, there's over 100 tips in the book, whether it be affirmations.
Practical tips. I loved those. They really.
So it's like a self-help, literally can take you through your own healing transformation journey. I've had people who've been reading the book now for 8 months. And they said, I'm up to chapter 6 now, but I've been doing every little thing and it's helping. So it gives you all of the tools in my toolbox that I actively used to heal from PTSD. Some are a little left of centre, some might be new, some might be familiar. And there might be some days that you need to use all of it or just one thing. But I think I'd like to hope that it lands in everybody's lap with the understanding that we all switch, but you don't have to stay there. You can choose to change.
Yeah. And I love that as a parting message. It's recognizing it to begin with, and then also acknowledging that we really do have the choice.
Yeah.
We don't have to stay stuck.
No. And the gift is the choice. The gift is continuing to make the choice every time you're triggered to remind yourself, oh, this is just my survival program. I don't have to stay here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that way you're changing your own neuroplasticity of your brain and rewiring your survival program back to thrive mode.
Yep, which is where we want to be. We want to be present and thriving.
And absorbing our minerals.
Well, thank you, Karen, for this.
Thank you.
Quick chat today. We'll catch up again and talk about your book. And you can pick up a copy where, if you want it?
You can come visit at www.karenhumphries.net.au/raw, or any good online bookstore like Amazon, Booktopia, Barnes & Noble. There's a few. Come visit my website, you'll see. If you order it through my website, you'll get it signed. As a signed version.
I've got my signed copy, and it's a beautiful message. I'll link that at all those things in the video anyway. So Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to do this again, Amy. We have so much more to talk about.
We certainly do.